The 2022 NFL Draft is shaping up to be a little different than recent years. One thing remains the same: the Jacksonville Jaguars making the first overall pick. If the Jags were drafting for need, they could certainly do a lot worse than Alabama left tackle Evan Neal, who could potentially protect the blind side for Trevor Lawrence for the foreseeable future. They could also bolster their pass rush with defensive ends Aiden Hutchinson or Kayvon Thibodeaux. As for who and when the first quarterback will come off the board, for now it looks like a debate between Matt Corral, Kenny Pickett, and Malik Willis out of Liberty. There are many teams drafting in the top 10 that may look in that direction. So who will stand pat or potentially trade up? As for the deepest positional group in the draft, if teams are looking for talented wideouts, there are plenty to choose from. You have the deep ball speedster Jamison Williams, the game-breaking duo out of Ohio State, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, to go along with Treylon Burks, Drake London, Jahan Dotson, and George Pickens, who could all potentially hear their names called on day one. So who will make the biggest leap or potentially slide in the draft process? April 28th in Sin City. Can't get here soon enough.
And this is the order for the draft, which is April the 28th in Las Vegas. The Jags with the number one pick for a second straight season. The Giants have a couple of top 7 picks. They have the 5th and 7th picks. And the Jets also have a pair of top 10 picks. They're picking 4th and 10th. Let's do a lightning first-round mock draft with our pals Ryan Wilson and Chris Trapasso. They each have their own first-round mocks, and we're going to go to each one of them for each one of these picks. Starting at the very top with the Jaguars, Ryan, I'll let you go first. Who are you getting to help last year's number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence?
Well, I'm going to the other side of the ball because it's going to be Aiden Hutchinson. And I know the conversation is they don't need an edge rusher. They've taken edge rushers in 2 of the last 3 years, but Aiden Hutchinson is that good for me. And there's going to be trouble trading out of this pick, Chris, because as we'll talk about, the quarterback class isn't a deep class like we saw in the same one with Trevor Lawrence a year ago. So they take the best player available, and Aiden Hutchinson, make the defense better, circle back with all their other high-round picks, second and third rounders, and fix every other hole they have, of course, after they figure out who their head coach is going to be. But offensive line makes sense here, but the best player for me is Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, I think to your point, Ryan, this would be an ideal scenario for the Jaguars to trade down. But you're right, they probably won't have a team, dying to get to that number 1 spot like they would have been in any of the previous past, probably 3 or 4 drafts to pick a quarterback. I have them picking Evan Neal, the offensive tackle from Alabama, strictly due to the fact that Trevor Lawrence being protected is the most important thing for this Jacksonville Jaguars organization. I think down the stretch, when he was protected a little bit better, especially in that season finale win over the Colts, you saw Trevor Lawrence see the field better, make better decisions. You need a blindside protector to be that franchise left tackle for your franchise quarterback for the next decade. With his athleticism and size, and just the fact that he's battle-tested in the SEC, I'm going on the other side of the ball with Evan Neal at number 1 overall.
Okay, Evan Neal, the offensive lineman, to help Trevor Lawrence. Ryan Wilson is going to the defensive side of the ball, Aiden Hutchinson. And at number 2, we have the Detroit Lions. And Ryan, Detroit had an opportunity, lose that last game against the Packers. They would have the number 1 overall pick. But this season, I guess just tell us, how much does it really matter if you have 1 or 2? And what are the viable trade opportunities that these teams will or won't have?
Yeah, I think the good news is they won that football game, and Dan Campbell appears to have that team going in the right direction. You don't necessarily have a lot of momentum in a final regular season game going into the next year, but it's better than getting your doors blown off for sure. And what does it mean for trade value? Had they lost, they have the first overall pick. No one's trading for that. Maybe to get Aiden Hutchinson, the local guy, and that's a story for a few weeks. But they get Kayvon Thibodeaux at the 2nd overall pick. And more importantly, they're not taking a quarterback because Jared Goff is their guy. More importantly than that, there's now an opportunity for a team to want to trade up for perhaps either Hutchinson or Thibodeaux or Evan Neal or another offensive lineman at number 2 as opposed to number 1. It'll be a little cheaper. So these are all good things for the Lions. Organization going in the right direction, won their final game against their division rival, the Green Bay Packers. And if all else fails, they get a great edge rusher in Kayvon Thibodeaux to help that young defense get even better.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget that the Lions already have 2 first-round picks from that Matthew Stafford trade. So they could ultimately maybe swing back and get a quarterback later in the first round. I have them picking Aiden Hutchinson, like Ryan said, the local kid from Michigan. He kind of just feels like a Dan Campbell type, that he is a 3-down defensive end who's going to play hard on every snap, high motor. And I like the fact, too, that he's not just a hustle guy. He's got a refined arsenal of pass rushing moves. We saw how much power he can play with in that Ohio State game. Wasn't great in the college football playoff against Georgia, but this is a defense that desperately needs to get more ferocious, more dynamic along its defensive line, getting after the quarterback. And I think Aiden Hutchinson will be that guy. But if they go Kayvon Thibodeau, that's fine too. Those are the two marquee blue chip edge rushers in this draft class.
Edge rushers to the Detroit Lions at number 2 overall. As we move to number 3, the Houston Texans. Chris, Davis Mills performed very well the second half of the season. You think they hold pat with Mills going into next season? If that's the case, who do they go with at 3?
Yeah, I have them picking Kayvon Thibodeau, the edge rusher from Oregon. I think Mills was good enough down the stretch once their head coach David Culley said, hey, you're the starter. We want to see you play. There's no worry about Tyrod Taylor stepping into your job. And you saw from Davis Mills the big-time throws, the arm strength, some athleticism that made him a third-round pick after barely starting at Stanford. So this will be a team that will look a lot different post-Deshaun Watson trade. But at this point, I think they got all they could have hoped for out of a third-round pick quarterback. Get your franchise edge rusher in Kayvon Thibodeau, who's a little bit raw, but has Myles Garrett-type athleticism.
Yeah, I think Chris is exactly right about what they got out of Davis Mills, exceeding expectations, played well down the stretch. Really no pressure. He wasn't Mac Jones trying to win football games late in the season, but that doesn't matter. He still played better than expectations. And here's something else to think about, Chris, both of you, by the way. If Davis Mills had stayed in school and come out this year, great chance he's the first quarterback taken off the board. So that's basically what the Texans have in this quarterback. So if they're moving forward in that direction, take an offensive lineman to protect Davis Mills. You're going to get a ton of draft capital and players for any Deshaun Watson trade that happens. In the interim, I have them taking Ike Ekwonu out of NC State. He is my number 1 offensive tackle. I remember early in the fall there was a conversation that maybe he's going to have to kick inside, and I was talking to some scouts about it, and they said absolutely not. That guy is absolutely dominant, and you watch him play, that's what shows up week in and week out. I have him going slightly ahead of Evan Neal in my offensive line rankings, and I have him going to Houston in this mock draft to protect Davis Mills.
All right, interesting, Ryan. You got the Jets at 4 now, and I think the Jets would be pretty pleased if they sit there at 4, Ryan, and Evan Neal is still there for them.
And Evan Neal's, who are they taking? So they have Elijah Vera-Tucker, who they drafted last year. They have Mekhi Becton, who they've drafted along the offensive line as first-round picks. And now they get one more piece of that puzzle in Evan Neal. We heard Scott Pioli talk about it yesterday in HQ, that Evan Neal, while he's a fantastic talent, hasn't quite lived up to the expectations this season. He struggled a little bit in that national championship game. And I think that might be sort of the consensus as we get close to the draft process. That said, he's a fantastic player, played really well throughout his career at Alabama, where he played left tackle, right tackle, left guard. And for me, I slot him between Jedrick Wills, who's a high ceiling sort of player, and Alex Leatherwood, who he replaced last year at Alabama. Goes to New York, protects Zach Wilson, who took what felt like 500 sacks this year, and that offense gets a little better with a quarterback now with a year experience under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, how big of an offensive line would the Jets be fielding in that scenario? To have Mekhi Becton at like 6'7", 360, and you pick someone in Evan Neal who is almost equally sized. I would like that for the Jets, but with Neal off the board in my mock draft, I actually have them going with Charles Cross, another SEC blocker, Mississippi State, very young, only 21 years old, but had a phenomenal season in 2021. He's one of the smoothest pass protectors that I've scouted, up there with Tyron Smith of the Cowboys and Jonah Williams of the Cincinnati Bengals. He's not crazy long, but I think he's going to be a riser during the pre-draft process because what he did in those games against Alabama and Georgia and some of those better defensive lines in the SEC. But the Jets absolutely need to prioritize offensive line with their first pick.
Both going with offensive linemen there to help Zach Wilson and the New York Jets at number 4. They will have another pick coming up in the top 10 in just a little bit. Let's go to number 5. And, Chris, it's the New York Giants, who had a terrible finish to the season. They might have been the worst team in the entire league the last month and a half. And you're kind of going with a little bit of a curveball here. Who do you have the Giants taking?
Kenny Pickett, the quarterback out of Pittsburgh. And I know Ryan is going to disagree with me. I just feel like this quarterback class, although we all understand it's not a Trevor Lawrence draft class or a Kyler Murray draft class or a Joe Burrow draft class, that position always gets pushed up by the time we get to the draft on April 28th. And Kenny Pickett, being a New Jersey guy, just feels like someone that Joe Judge will gravitate toward. And if you're Joe Judge, after what's gone on in your first 2 seasons with the team, where a lot of people were really surprised that you weren't fired, you need to make it right at the quarterback position. Kenny Pickett, very experienced, but he had a breakout 2021. I could see him having a Joe Burrow type ascension into the top 5 for a team that desperately needs to prioritize quarterback with their first pick.
Chris, you're right. These quarterbacks always get pushed up. And is this too high for Kenny Pickett? It is for me. But I think if you're drafting Kenny Pickett there and you're asking him to be head coach, I'm actually okay with that because Joe Judge, I don't know what's happened to him, but he appears to be overtaken by aliens with some of the decisions he's made in recent weeks. That said, I'm not going quarterback here. I'm giving Daniel Jones one more chance. We'll see what happens with Joe Judge. He appears to be coming back. I have them taking Kyle Hamilton. They would have loved to have gotten one of the offensive linemen ahead in the mock draft, going just a few picks behind them. Instead, they go with arguably the best player, the best athlete. It's just a matter of making sure you don't ask him to do too much. We saw this in the past with Isaiah Simmons when he left Clemson for Arizona. He seemed lost for a little bit, but once he had a plan, he attacked that plan, and I think Kyle Hamilton is going to be an even better player. Help that defense and Patrick Graham, who's done a great job as defensive coordinator. They have another draft pick coming up soon, so they can address the offensive line if they want to. But right now, I haven't taken the best player on the board.
Giants coming up once again at number 7 because of that trade with the Bears last year for Justin Fields and that draft position. Sandwiched in between those 2 Giants picks, it's the Carolina Panthers. And Chris, you're giving us another quarterback.
Yeah, I'm a man of my word, and I think quarterback will, again, get pushed up. Malik Willis is my favorite quarterback in this draft class. I completely understand that he's raw. He's coming from Liberty. He had that pretty bad game in terms of throwing a bunch of interceptions against Ole Miss, but his team was severely overmatched on offensive line, at the receiver positions. If you watch him play against normal competition where it was a level playing field, Malik Willis can make some of those Justin Herbert and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes type throws. And after watching that Matt Rule press conference after the season, kind of gave a weird answer about the future for Sam Darnold, didn't seem too confident. That's another organization with a coach that has 2 years under his belt, not a lot of success. They have to look at the quarterback position and figure out what they want to do. I think yes, you'd be taking a risk with Malik Willis, but the potential rewards for picking him makes him worthy of a selection inside the top 10.
Chris, on the surface, I understand Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis going this high. My only concern, and I was actually talking with a front office executive about this, if you're going to take a franchise quarterback, you have to bolster the offensive line no matter what. And I said you have to sell out free agency in the draft because otherwise you have Zach Wilson running for his life, and it's hard to tell whether he's good or not. And they didn't quite go that far, but they understood the theory I was putting out there. That said, I'm not taking a quarterback for the Panthers here, even though they desperately need one. I don't think Sam Darnold's ever going to take another snap at Carolina unless there are injury issues in front of him. And maybe we'll see what David Tepper, the owner, does in the offseason in terms of going after Deshaun Watson, for example. I have them fixing the offensive line. That's the bottom line. No matter who the quarterback is, whether it's Dan Marino or Sam Darnold, you have to protect them. I have them taking Charles Cross, who you had going earlier, Chris. I love his game as well. He came on really strong this year in the SEC against some of the best players on the planet. I think he's going to be a guy you can put in right away, have some success with, and at the end of the day, fix an offensive line for a team that desperately needs to find a way to protect the quarterback.
All right, moving to the Giants pick again, their second pick in the top 7, and a few picks ago, Chris threw us a bit of a curveball and had the Giants picking Kenny Pickett, number 5. So, Chris, who do you have the Giants taking with the 7th overall pick?
Yeah, a lot of what Ryan just said applies here. I have them going with Ike Ekwonu, the offensive tackle from North Carolina State. Ryan and I are both big fans of his game. And I think if you're Joe Judge, that could help you win back the fan base a little bit. Drafting a quarterback and then getting another offensive lineman. He would probably have to play right tackle because Andrew Thomas, the first-round pick of a few years ago, has really come on strong and looks like someone that can be one of the better young left tackles in the NFL. But you need more than one good blocker, of course, with how many good pass rushers there are in today's NFL. Ekwonu is balanced. He's powerful. If you do need him to play guard, he can do that. But going quarterback and then offensive tackle, I think, makes the most sense in terms of positional value for a team in the Giants that has a lot of needs.
Yeah, we're in the same wavelength here, Chris. I had them going also along the offensive line. 2 picks ago, I had them taking Kyle Hamilton. They rolled the dice. They missed out on Charles Cross, who I had going with the very next pick. I have had mock drafts in the past where the Giants take 2 offensive linemen in the first round. I had 0 pushback on it from Giants fans. This time I have him taking Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa, Hassel's guy there. Let's see, since 2010, 3 centers have gone as high as 18th, and that's as high as they have gone. I have him going, obviously, in the top 10. I think he's that good and that important to what not only the Giants need, but there are plenty of teams in the top 15 picks that could use Tyler Linderbaum. And if he doesn't go here, he will not be long waiting in the green room, virtual or otherwise, once the actual draft rolls around, to hear his name called. I think he's going to be that good of a player.
And he might have the highest floor of anybody, and that might be why teams are willing to take him that high in the draft in the top 10. To number 8 we go, and you guys both like the same player here for the Atlanta Falcons. Chris, tell us why Derek Stingley Jr. would be a good fit in Atlanta.
Well, he checks all the boxes for an outside corner. He's tall, he's twitchy, he's crazy fast. I think he's got sprinter speed. We know that freshman season during that LSU national title year, he was arguably the best player on that defense that was loaded with future NFL players. He does have the injury, but I think once the draft rolls around, when he gets cleared medically, he's going to be one of the higher floor prospects on the defensive side. The Falcons got a great year out of A.J. Terrell. We know that they have at least one more season with Matt Ryan under center or in the shotgun there in Atlanta. And I think Derek Stingley and A.J. Terrell would be a great tandem. The Falcons need to rebuild that defense, and that would be a really good start with those 2 corners.
All right, we are 8 picks into our lightning first-round mock with Chris Trapasso and Ryan Wilson. Nakobe Dean is still on the board. Where do the guys have him going? And when will Ryan have his first quarterback go off the board? Pick number 9 coming up next. Got a couple dueling first-round mock drafts from Ryan Wilson and Chris Trapasso, our draft experts here on CBS Sports HQ. I'm Chris Hassel. Ryan, the Broncos coming up here at pick number 9. They need a quarterback, whether it's in free agency or a trade or maybe the draft.
That's right. I haven't taken Matt Corral, the first quarterback off the board for me. We heard Vic Fangio say hours before he was fired that we need a quarterback virtually if we're going to compete in this division, and he's not wrong. I love Matt Corral. I love the fit because, as I've said before, you have to have pieces around your young quarterback to have success. They have a good young defense. The offensive line is pretty good. They have the playmakers on the outside and in the backfield, and I think he'll be able to come in and play sooner rather than later in an incredibly tough division. But again, as Fangio noted, you got to have a QB, so I'll give him one here.
All right, it's incredibly early, but I think the Broncos are going to be the team in which Aaron Rodgers plays for next year. I think the fact that they're wanting to talk to Nathaniel Hackett, the quarterback coach there in Green Bay currently, who has a great relationship with Aaron Rodgers. So I kind of factor that in. I added some intrigue in mid-January to this mock draft, which is like the 20th I've done since the start of the football season. I have the Broncos going with Nakobe Dean, the linebacker that we saw play a great game last night against Alabama. Due to injuries, the Broncos ran through a ton of linebackers in this past season, and Dean really checks all the boxes that you want. He's twitchy, he's smart, he's great in coverage, he's a fantastic blitzer, a lot like Roquan Smith, who came out of Georgia in the 2018 draft class.
And at number 10, Ryan, you can just piggyback right off that because you have the Jets taking Dean.
Yeah, like Chris, he's my number 1 off-ball linebacker. And as Chris noted, he had a career game last night, which says something for a guy who had plenty of career games throughout his season at Georgia. Also, by the way, electrical engineering maker, so he's no dummy. He's an incredibly smart guy, great teammate, great locker room guy. And now the Jets get someone to help on defense to go along with their other first-round pick, Evan Neal. I feel like that would be a home run for Robert Saleh heading into year 2 if he could get those 2 players in the top 12 picks there.
Yeah, and then my pick for the Jets is Kyle Hamilton. I think that is a secondary that we saw get really victimized for pretty much the entire season. They have Marcus May on the franchise tag, who got injured. He's set to hit free agency. I think Robert Saleh would like to bring back Marcus May, who was really their only playmaker in that secondary. But if you add Kyle Hamilton to that group, I think Saleh, who is clearly a brilliant defensive mind from the time we saw him in San Francisco, could do a lot of different things with Kyle Hamilton and let him roam free at the second and third levels of that defense. So we both like Kyle Hamilton a lot, and I think he's locked into the top 10.
And you guys both had the Jets take an offensive lineman at number 4 to help Zach Wilson out as well. So that's the top 10. Moving to number 11 now, Ryan, it's the Washington football team. You still don't have many quarterbacks off the board. You did have your first at 9 to the Broncos. Do you have another one going to Washington?
Number 2 comes off the board right here to Washington. And I'll just say this. As we sit here, Matt Corral is the only quarterback that I have with a first-round grade. Every other quarterback is second round or below that. Kenny Pickett for me is a second-round quarterback. That doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. Derek Carr win the second round. Russ Wilson win the third round. It all matters how it fits when he gets to wherever his landing spot will be. For me, it's going to be Washington. And there are a lot of pieces around Kenny Pickett. He went back. He's 24 years old. There's a lot of the Joe Burrow similarities, as Chris has mentioned earlier, in terms of the going from sort of mediocre quarterback to out-of-this-world playmaker. And I think in Washington, a team that has a chance to always compete in that division that hasn't been very good, it's a good landing spot for him. So this is where I have him going now as the 11th overall pick, second quarterback off the board.
Yeah, this is my landing spot for Matt Corral. I think the Washington football team got quality contributions from Taylor Heineke, about as good as you can hope for a 27-year-old guy that's played in the XFL and a bunch of semi-pro leagues. But I think they have to prioritize the quarterback spot. If you're Ron Rivera, you have to try to upgrade. Could we see a quarterback competition between Heineke and Corral in training camp? Absolutely. And they have similar skill sets, but Corral has probably a little bit better of an arm and is more dynamic of a runner, so there's more upside with him. But we do agree, quarterback has to be the pick for the Washington football team.
All right, number 12 is the Minnesota Vikings. They still have Kirk Cousins under contract for another year. Ryan, they're going to have a new head coach, a new general manager as well. What direction do you see them going right now? I know it's just a guess because we don't know who those decision makers are going to be.
A lot of questions to answer for sure, but I have him going with cornerback. Jeff Gladney, the former first-round pick, has already been cut from the football team. We know that Mike Zimmer loved defense, but that clearly is no longer a concern for them. But their defense still needs to get much better. Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson is the guy I have going there. Short on experience coming into this year, and he absolutely balled out. He's my CB2. I actually like him better than Darian Kendrick, his former teammate at Clemson, who transferred to Georgia and played really well over the last few weeks as well. So I think Andrew Booth has a chance to be a top 15 type talent. And I think in Minnesota, he makes a ton of sense. Our guy, Pat P, is in the final year of his deal. He wants to go back there. Even if he does, you can never have too many cornerbacks. That's why I like Booth going to Minnesota.
Yeah, I love Andrew Booth as well. He's my cornerback number 2. He's got light feet. He plays the ball very well in the air. He has some really acrobatic interceptions on his film. I have the Vikings going Garrett Wilson. I think, like Chris said, to still have Kirk Cousins under contract, you know what you're going to get with him, and if you don't have a quality receiver group around him, the play might not be very good. Justin Jefferson is a bona fide superstar. Adam Thielen ended the season on IR. He's getting up there in age. Garrett Wilson, to me, is the most NFL-ready wide receiver. Routes, contested catchability, yards after the catch. I would love to see that duo, Justin Jefferson and Garrett Wilson in Minnesota.
Okay, let's move on to the Cleveland Browns, who have the 13th pick after missing the postseason. Ryan, you don't think Baker Mayfield is for long in Cleveland, huh?
I hear what you said, Andrew Berry. I don't know if I'm quite believing it just yet. We're a little early in the process. So, yeah, I have Malik Willis going to the Cleveland Browns. And Chris talked about all the great things about Malik Willis. And the end of the story, the bottom line is that he's going to be incredibly raw, and you can't force him into a situation that's not going to work. And Baker Mayfield might raise his hand and say, hey, it didn't work for me either. But here's the thing. Stefanski, when he's refusing not to give the ball to Nick Chubb, is a great coach. He won Coach of the Year last year. They have a fantastic offensive line. They have a young, fast, strong defense. They have playmakers on the outside. They can certainly sign or draft a few more. This is a perfect landing spot for any young quarterback, and Malik Willis has the highest upside of any of the guys coming to the draft. So this is probably not going to happen, but I love the idea, the thought process behind it, and it could make some sense if you're willing to move on from Baker Mayfield, Andrew Berry.
Yeah, if I'm the Browns, I think they'll give Baker Mayfield one more season unimpeded without any real quarterback competition, and then just make their final decision if they're going to extend him or just let him walk in free agency. I think he's probably not the answer. I think at this point, given his age and his experience, we would already know who Baker Mayfield was if he was a franchise guy. I have them going Chris Olave to help Baker Mayfield out in this final contract year for him. Was very good early in his career at Ohio State. Runs sharp routes, and a very deceptive part of his game. He is very good tracking the football deep down the field. And we know Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield like those play-action deep shots. They were kind of missing that after they traded Odell Beckham Jr. So Chris Olave, maybe not a all-pro caliber potential, but a high-floor player that will help Baker from week 1.
Okay, that is number 13. At number 14, another team that was disappointing this season. A lot of it had to do with Lamar Jackson's injury issues. The Ravens did not make the postseason. Chris, who do you have the Ravens taking here at 14?
I have them going with Ahmad Gardner, and it's got to be a cornerback. We know the injuries to Marcus Peters. Jimmy Smith's up there in age as well. And it has to be the right corner. It's got to be one of two guys. I'm going with Gardner from Cincinnati because he's physical. He's played on an island in Luke Fickell's defense, and he's been really productive. He didn't allow a touchdown in his entire career for the Bearcats. They want to play press man. They want to blitz a lot and put their corners in those difficult situations. I think Gardner has the fluidity, the ball skills, and just the nasty demeanor that you need to be a good on-an-island cornerback in the NFL.
Chris, you mentioned the Ravens were a disappointment this year. So were the Florida Gators, and I mentioned that because I have the Ravens taking Kaiir Elam, the cornerback out of Florida, who wasn't disappointing this season. He was a bright spot. And just like Chris Trapasso just mentioned, the Ravens need to figure out that secondary. A lot of it was because of injuries. I get that. Long, physical down the field, and I say down the field because he doesn't tackle particularly well coming up to the line of scrimmage. And I was texting the scout about that, and I said, what does that mean? Does that mean these are business decisions? He goes, no. It might just be the case that doesn't have a lot of confidence in his tackling abilities. That's something you can fix. You can't fix being 6'2" and having long arms and being able to break up passes down the field consistently. So I like him going to the Ravens in a really competitive and physical AFC North.
Okay, and now we move on to a team that they basically have like the last pick in the fantasy draft of the first round. You know, when you get pick 12 and then pick 13 to swing it back. It's the Philadelphia Eagles who have picks 15 and 16 back-to-back here. Ryan, who do you have them going with?
George Karlaftis out of Purdue, and he's a guy who was unstoppable in 2019. During the COVID year, didn't play a lot, had some injuries. It was hard to tell who he was going to be. And then this year he came out like gangbusters. Some people like him a little more than I do, but I like him as a middle of the first round talent. They need help on the edge. They have some guys getting up in age like Brandon Graham. They have other guys whose contracts can be voided after the season. They re-up Josh Sweat, but now you bring in another talent to help as an edge rusher in Philadelphia. So I'll go with George Karlaftis here.
I'm going to go with Tyler Linderbaum, Chris's guy from Iowa that went, I think, in the top 10 in Ryan's mock, which I would be fine with because I love Linderbaum. Jason Kelsey is an all-timer Philadelphia Eagle, 34 years old. His contract expires in March. I think that would just be a perfect transition for this team. We know what they like to do. They ask their centers to get out in space, and that's certainly what Linderbaum does very, very well.
And Chris, who would you have him going with then with the very next pick?
Andrew Booth, the cornerback from Clemson. I just think, again, he has the light feet, the acrobatic ball skills to add to that secondary that has Darius Slay but needs more playmakers.
And I have him going with Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. He's my first wide receiver off the board. Sort of late here, but that's just how the board falls. The Eagles need help at wide receiver. Yes, they took Devontae Smith last year, Jalen Reagor the year before that. There's not much on the roster beyond this free agency period in terms of who will remain. Jalen Hurts is their guy. Put playmakers around him out on the outside, and I think Garrett Wilson will be a nice complement to Devontae Smith, who's had a fantastic rookie campaign.
It's like a broken record. Every year it seems like we have the Eagles taking a wide receiver, or at least we want them to take a wide receiver in the first round. All right, we're halfway through our lightning first-round mock with our draft duo experts, Ryan Wilson and Chris Trapasso. What about Jameson Williams? The injury in the national championship game. How might that affect his draft stock? We'll talk about that next.
Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ. We have dueling mock drafts going on right now. I'm going to pick up where Chris Hassel left off. Let's welcome back Ryan and Chris. So let's go with the Chargers at 17. Just the second time so far you guys actually agree on one. Both of you taking David Ojabo. So Ryan, we'll start with you. Give us your argument.
Yeah, that Melvin Ingram left. They have Joey Bosa, of course. The defense wasn't great, and the reality is Brandon Staley, for as great as he was as a first-year head coach, and I think I have a crush on him, there were questions about the defense throughout the course of the season. And I think David Ojabo, the physical freak who played opposite Aiden Hutchinson at Michigan, makes a lot of sense here in the middle of the first round. He didn't have a great showing in the semifinal round. That's okay. He is going to be a really good player who's just scratching the surface. And you talk to some scouts, they think he might end up being having a higher ceiling than Aiden Hutchinson. So I'm going to Los Angeles to join Brandon Staley and Joey Bosa and the Chargers.
So you guys agree on that one, which means we can go to the next one. Saints at 18. Ryan, I got to start with you again, though, because you have them selecting Jamison Williams. We saw him get hurt last night. How much is that? Obviously, you made the mock draft before this. How much is that going to affect him?
It's going to affect him, and this is my pet peeve. I don't understand why we have these players in the NFL, at least, who are making millions of dollars, and you make them play on turf where ACL injuries are much more likely. I joked yesterday about tearing my ACL soon. They have a Neil box jump. This clearly isn't funny. But here's the takeaway. He's a first-round talent, could be the number one wide receiver taken. I think Brady Quinn likes him as his number one. Jeffrey Simmons of the Titans a few years ago was a top 10 talent towards ACL in February, went in the 20s. I think this is a similar situation. Williams tore his ACL a month or so earlier, so he'll be back probably in September. But it's unfair to him, and it's unlucky, but I think he'll come back, fully recover, and be absolutely dominant. For me, he's still a first-round pick.
Yeah, I have the Saints going with Treylon Burks. So same position, we agree on that. And I agree with most of what Ryan's saying, that it's going to affect Jamison Williams. I don't know if we're going to see him picked inside the first round, but the Saints do need a receiver with Treylon Burks, 6'3", 220, and he's not stiff. He's very good at creating yards after the catch. I think his routes, for how big he is, are actually pretty good. And Arkansas used him in the screen game on jet sweeps. They just tried to get him the football in space, which usually doesn't happen for a receiver his size. And of course, he's awesome in those rebounding situations. The Saints have some needs on offense, but receiver might be chief among them after quarterback. And Treylon Burks, to me, was one of the biggest bullies in the SEC.
We have the Eagles loading up. They had 15-16. Now we see them again at 19. Now both of you have them improving the defense, but in different ways. Chris, we'll start with you here.
Yeah, it's a guy that Ryan already picked, George Karlaftis, the edge rusher from Purdue. What I like about George Karlaftis, like Ryan mentioned, in 2019 as a freshman, he looked like a dude that was going to be picked in the first round. That if you're just dominating in your super senior season at 23 or 24 years old, that could be a little bit of a red flag. But George Karlaftis has the NFL caliber body, looks already like an NFL defensive end. Pass rushing moves are good. The power is good. And he kind of feels like a middle part of the first round type of talent. The Eagles replaced Derek Barnett and Brandon Graham with George Karlaftis.
And I'm going with Roger McCreary. I had the Eagles taking Karlaftis earlier. They circled back and got a wide receiver. And now with their third pick, they get two defenders and one offensive playmaker. So Roger McCreary out of Auburn, fantastic season. Probably one of the steadiest cornerbacks in college football. You can always rely on him to be in the right place at the right time, usually breaking up passes or having a chance to get an interception. Will come up and support the run. And while he's not the greatest athlete or he's going to run the fastest 40 time, he is where you want him to be. And that's the biggest learning curve for these young cornerbacks coming in the NFL, being in the right spot. And I think Roger McCreary solves that issue for any coach that drafts him. I'd like him to go in the first round, probably right around this range, Amanda.
I love this next one. We got Steelers coming up at 20. Not sure exactly when we will see Big Ben's last game, but it will happen sooner rather than later. Chris, I want to start with you because you are going with a quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to hear Ryan's thoughts on this as a Steelers guy. I have him going with Desmond Ridder, the quarterback from Cincinnati. I know he didn't finish his college career on a high note, getting really blown out against that national title-winning Georgia defense. But thinking about the Steelers organization, and Kevin Colbert said he's going to step down their GM after this season, I could see him with a little parting gift to the organization. A quarterback in Ridder that was a 3-year starter, loads of experience, a big-time winner. I like his athleticism. I like his arm talent, that he can make throws off platform. Is he the most accurate? Is he the most polished quarterback prospect in this draft class? No. But I think with the skill position players and how well we know Pittsburgh drafts those wideouts on the second day, this seems like a parting gift to the organization from Kevin Colbert, an experienced guy similar to Ben Roethlisberger, 15 or 20 years ago.
Amanda, you asked when the Steelers season's going to be over for Big Ben. Sunday night at around 11:30 p.m. Eastern, he will be done. And then he can play golf Monday morning if he so chooses. So there's the answer to that question. As for the Desmond Ridder, I love Desmond Ridder, the football player. But Chris touched on it. The lack of consistency with the passing, the accuracy is a huge concern in order for him to be a first-rounder, especially for a Steelers team that has so many needs. I've talked all show about how you have to fix the offensive line for these young quarterbacks, and that would be a concern for me. So I like Desmond Ridder more middle to late second round guy, but that doesn't mean a team won't do it. Instead of having them beefing up the secondary, they're going to lose a ton of guys in free agency. They're actually going to have some cap space for the first time, but I have them going to Trent McDuffie out of Washington, a player I absolutely love. He plays outside, but he plays with a sort of tenacity and ferocity that can kick him inside as a slot guy as well, and that's the type of thing you need in the Steelers defense, the versatility and the ability to be physical. I like Trent McDuffie here. If one of these other quarterbacks that I've talked about falls, then maybe there's a conversation for that.
All right, let's go to the Patriots at 21. Look, slam dunk with Mac Jones. We all know that. Both of you have them taking a cornerback, but different names in this one. Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, Ryan and I just flip-flopped the Patriots and the Ravens corners. I have them going Kaiir Elam. They're similar styles defensively in Baltimore and New England. They like to play a lot of press man and be really physical. They blitz a lot, put their cornerbacks in difficult situations. But with someone that has the length of Kaiir Elam, like Ryan said earlier, 6'2", played in the SEC, has a lot of ball production, can get a little bit overly grabby down the field, but if you can get away with that, you can be a lockdown player like we've seen the likes of Stephon Gilmore or J.C. Jackson or Jonathan Jones in Bill Belichick's defense. And I think Kaiir Elam landing there, he could be almost an instant superstar for the Patriots.
And as Chris noted, I had him taking Sauce Gardner, who coming into the season, I wanted to see him get a little stronger. He did that. He fills out his uniform. He's much more physical than he was early on in his career. But as Chris noted, he didn't give him a touchdown pass in the previous 2 years either, so he's doing something right. J.C. Jackson's going to get a lot of money. Now the question becomes, does New England want to give it to him? Sometimes they're willing to move on from their players, but he's been fantastic. Whether he stays or not, adding someone like Sauce Gardner, as Chris has pointed out with Kaiir Elam, makes a ton of sense on a secondary that could use some upgrades at other positions. So that's why I haven't taken Ahmad Gardner here. I love his game, and he'll be at the Senior Bowl, so we'll get to see him in a few weeks.
Let's go to the Dolphins at 22. And Ryan, I want to start with you because you're getting Tua another weapon. You point out in your mock draft that, look, they still need O-line help, but they also need help at this position as well.
That's right, Chris Olave, who is probably the best route runner or one of the best route runners in this class. Now, we'll see what the plan is with Tua. We know Brian Flores, there was some friction between him and Chris Greer about the quarterback situation, and that's part of the reason reportedly why Brian Flores moved on. I love Chris Olave. I thought Tua got better throughout the course of this season after struggling as a rookie. As you mentioned, Amanda, O-line help makes sense here, and there's some guys they could perhaps stretch for. Instead, they go with a playmaker to pair opposite Jalen Waddle, who had a fantastic rookie campaign.
And I'm going along the route of helping Tua Tagovailoa, but up front with Bernard Raymond, the offensive tackle from Central Michigan. He's going to be at the Senior Bowl, and I think after that week in Mobile, we're going to hear a lot about Raymond as a first-round caliber talent. He's a former tight end who transitioned to the left tackle spot, very athletic. I think he's pretty strong already. He can certainly add some weight to his frame. It's kind of reminiscent of Lane Johnson, who was kind of an unknown guy, former tight end, got to the Senior Bowl, and then went inside the top 5 of the draft. So I think for anyone that criticizes Tua Tagovailoa, you get pushback from Dolphins fans saying, hey, the offensive line still isn't very good. So I think whoever the next head coach is will want to look in that direction in the first round of the draft.
Yeah, whoever that head coach is, whoever the coach is for the Raiders as well, we find them at 23 there. Ryan, I'm going to start with you because I do have a soft spot for Cam Thomas. I covered him a lot the past couple seasons there. I have never heard so much praise from coaches about one player, just who he is as a person, and that's you have them selecting.
That's right, absolutely. And for me, he's the second best player on that team behind Matt Araiza, the punter, who could kick the ball 400 yards. But that's no shame in being behind Matt Araiza. But you're right, Cam Thomas is an absolute beast. And luckily you got to see him, so you knew about him. But no one else outside of San Diego had much of an inkling of just how good this guy was. Then you watch him play, and he absolutely takes over. He had 12 sacks this season, 21 hits, 44 hurries, all career best. And he played really well the previous years of his career as well. He is hard to block one-on-one. He is great against the pass. He's somehow even better against the run. He goes to Las Vegas and helps a team that is certainly playing better, but they need some help opposite Max Crosby, and Cam Thomas provides that.
Yeah, and I think Cam Thomas and Max Crosby would be just the perfect duo in a division with Patrick Mahomes. I actually have the Las Vegas Raiders picking Trent McDuffie with everything that transpired with their former first-round pick, Damon Arnett, the cornerback. He's no longer with the team. They need more help in that secondary. They have seen the production that they can get from Derek Carr. It's clearly good enough to make the postseason, but they have to get better on the back end, again, in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. So Trent McDuffie can play corner, he can play in the slot, he can play safety if need be. We know there's a long track record of really high-quality secondary members coming from that Washington program, and I like Trent McDuffie a lot.
All right, finally, let's go to the Cardinals here at 24. Again, same position, but you guys are looking at different players. Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I have them picking Drake London, the wide receiver from USC. 6'5" and 215 pounds. So he's not that big body in terms of someone that is going to out-physical you, but he plays above the rim. And it's fitting because he actually played on the USC basketball team for a stretch earlier in his career. And you see the basketball-type quickness when he's running his route. So if you want to add more size to your receiver group, Drake London is the guy for you because he can create separation and is good after the catch. And I think the Cardinals, with A.J. Green, DeAndre Hopkins getting up there in age, should look to add another weapon for Kyler Murray in their wide-open offense.
I agree with that last sentiment, Chris, because Dre Hopkins, after he went out, Kyler Murray's looked like a different quarterback, in part because A.J. Green, who's up there, can't do what he was capable of doing back during the Cincinnati days. Rondale Moore is an explosive middle-of-the-field guy. You get the ball in end-arounds, he can take over in that sense. We know about Christian Kirk, but he's not a true number one. I haven't taken Treylon Burks, who you've already talked up from Arkansas, and he is a grown man, and he will bully guys, even NFL-level defensive backs, both cornerbacks and safeties. I love the idea of not necessarily replacing Dre Hopkins, but perhaps joining Dre Hopkins if A.J. Green goes on elsewhere and getting that offense back to what it was over the first half of the season.
All right, guys, we got 25 through 32 coming up. Hang on just a second. We know this first round loaded with Georgia Bulldogs, including someone by the name of Darian Kendrick. But will a history of off-the-field issues hurt him in this draft? We'll find out from the guys next. Welcome back in. Ryan Wilson, Chris Trapasso here. The final part of the dueling mock drafts, but not a lot of dueling in this next one. With the Bengals selecting at 25, the third time you guys have agreed, Kenyon Green. Chris, we'll start with you here. They went with Jamar Chase instead of Penei Sewell, but Joe Burrow, he still needs some help up there.
Yeah, and now they circle back with a really good offensive tackle in Kenyon Green, who can play multiple positions. He did that at Texas A&M. 35 starts over the past 3 seasons. I think he's probably a tackle, but if the Bengals want to use him at guard, he can be that powerful masher type. Very good balance. I think he has an NFL caliber body. And I think he's got pretty good upside because he's a good athlete as well. But they would not have to worry about, a full year of him having to acclimate to the NFL in terms of the power and the strength that he's going to need to deal with NFL defensive linemen.
Ryan, let's go Buffalo at 26, and that is where we find a now national champion in Darian Kendrick. We had Scott Pioli on yesterday, and he says, look, front offices are going to look at these off-the-field issues with him, but you have them selecting him here.
Yeah, and you're right, Amanda. He left Clemson under some circumstances that weren't great. Dabo Swinney did come out and said he loved that young man, to quote him, and he appears to have been on the straight and narrow in Georgia, and more importantly, on the field, he's playing exceptional football, and I think that's the important takeaway. But you're exactly right. We'll find out through the pre-draft process what teams think about him off the field through the interview process, but if he can nail that, he is very much a first-round talent. I thought he was a first-round talent last year before he decided to enter the transfer portal for reasons that we now know about. Great season at Georgia, played on a great defense there, and I think I would just recommend don't take your shirt off in the middle of the game. Don't walk off the field in the middle of the game and wave the crowd. You will be fine, Darian Kendrick.
Yeah, and I have the Bills going with Roger McCreary, the cornerback from Auburn, that Ryan talked about earlier. With Levi Wallace set to hit free agency, and of course Tre'Davious White coming off the ACL injury, I think cornerback has got to be a marquee position for the Bills to address early in this draft. Go back to 2019, Roger McCreary as a sophomore against Jamar Chase, in that really tough game for Chase and Joe Burrow there at Auburn. Roger McCreary did a great job against Jamar Chase that we know is a borderline superstar in his rookie season. Not a crazy fast guy, but just always around the football, aware when it's arriving and makes a lot of plays on it. He feels like a Sean McDermott zone type of corner that would acclimate really quickly in Buffalo.
I would say out of anybody, I'm sure that would be Will Brinson doing that. I'm surprised he hasn't, Ryan, on the Pick Six podcast there. Let's go to the Lions at 27. You guys have the same name at 27 and 28. One of you, we'll start with you, Chris, because you have him going at 27 to the Lions.
Yeah, Devin Lloyd. I mean, he is an absolute missile on the football field. Reminds me of Darius Leonard, Reuben Foster, who was a first-round pick of the 49ers. He had a ton of tackles for loss in that Utah defense. Not even just his athleticism and his explosion. I think he reads plays at lightning speed. Pretty good in coverage, too. He can match up and certainly run with tight ends down the seam. But the Lions, again, a team that has a lot of needs on the defensive side and on offense. To get Aiden Hutchinson and then Devin Lloyd, I think you'd be looking at two more powerful players that can add some more explosion to Dan Campbell's defense.
Those feel like Dan Campbell players. I had him taking Kevin Thibodeau earlier. Now I have him circling back, taking Drake London, the USC standout that Chris has talked previously about. He had him going a few picks earlier. He had a fractured ankle at the end of the season at USC, but he is a high point catch machine. He's actually a yak monster, even though he's not going to run a 4.3 40. I don't think he will anyway. And he saved a lot of Keaton Slovis's poor throws, if you will, throughout the season. He was one of the few bright spots. I love the idea of teaming him up with his former teammate at USC, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who absolutely busted out during the second half of this season as a rookie. He was fun to watch, and I think Jared Goff appears to be the guy. Give him more weapons, and that would be in the form, in this case, of Drake London.
If this was an actual draft, Ryan, you'd be going back to your board because Chris took your pick there at 27, but you have the Cowboys selecting Devin Lloyd at 28. Why is he a good fit there?
And just so we're clear, I'm having trouble focusing because you brought up Will Brinson running around with no clothes on. Thanks for that. But I have them take can't unsee it, Amanda. I'm taking Devin Lloyd, who we just talked about. And here's the thing. I love the idea of taking Micah Parsons as an off-ball linebacker and then realizing, oh, my God, this guy's the best edge rusher in the NFL. Let's take another off-ball linebacker and see how good he can be. Devin Lloyd's that guy. And that defense under Dan Quinn has been amazing. We'll see if Dan Quinn returns. He could very well get a head coaching job. But I love the idea of continuing to stock up the defense with athletic, versatile playmakers who can destroy quarterbacks. And that's what we had Micah Parsons, and that's what Devin Lloyd would give you as well.
It's crazy to me how in just 1 year the Cowboys went from a laughingstock defense to one of the scariest defenses in all of the NFL with Trevon Diggs, of course, Micah Parsons, Randy Gregory, DeMarcus Lawrence. They have a lot of playmakers on that side. So I actually have them picking David Bell, kind of a surprising name, the wide receiver from Purdue. Over the past 3 seasons, almost 3,000 yards receiving, 21 receiving touchdowns. He's great in contested catch situations. Not a physical freak, not the craziest athletic specimen, but the Cowboys are probably going to lose Michael Gallup in free agency, and it's all about prioritizing offense and building your offense if you have a quarterback like the Cowboys do in Dak Prescott. They picked CeeDee Lamb in the first round a few years ago. David Bell, an under-the-radar guy that I think would be very productive for the Cowboys.
Let's go to the Chiefs at 29. Chris, we'll start with you because this is now where we find Cam Thomas for you.
Yeah, I love this fit for the Chiefs because they really need a versatile playmaker on their defensive line. They tried Chris Jones out on the edge, but realized he's best rushing the quarterback from the middle. Cam Thomas at 6'5", and around 270 pounds, played all up and down that Aztecs defensive line, even played some nose tackle. He probably won't play there in the NFL, but I love his pass rushing moves, how high energy of a player he is, and to only have one star player up front for the Chiefs, they need to get better and spread out the wealth a little bit in terms of their pass rush. Cam Thomas would be a home run pick for them late in the first round.
I agree, Chris. And if there were an edge rusher available, that would be an option for me as well. Cornerback would also be an option. All the good ones are gone, so I have them taking Jackson Kirkland, the offensive lineman out of Washington. He played left tackle, and he did a really good job against Kayvon Thibodeau when they matched up against Oregon. The Chiefs are forever needing to upgrade their offensive line. They made some moves this offseason and improved it, but you can continue to improve it because you're protecting arguably the most important person in the NFL, and Patrick Mahomes. I've talked about how important it is to protect these young quarterbacks. That's what Andy Reid does here when they go out and get Jackson Kirkland.
We only have 3 more picks, and you guys agree on 2 of the last 3, which means they're pretty good there. Let's go with the Bucs at 30. Both of you have them selecting Daxton Hill. Ryan, tell us why.
I love Daxton Hill out of Michigan. On a Michigan defense, by the way, that's going to have 4 or 5 guys drafted. He's listed as a safety. He plays primarily in the slot. He's extremely physical. He is great coming downhill against the run. He is great playing in coverage. And one of the games that I point to is the matchup against Jahan Dotson and Penn State. They did a good job of clamming up Jahan Dotson, who has been so explosive this year. And you can watch every single time throughout the season for Daxton Hill how good he is at going both downhill and dropping into coverage. I think he makes a lot of sense here in Tampa Bay, where they've had a ton of injuries in the back end, and they'll have some guys' contracts who are up as well. He'll fit right in to that Todd Bowles defense, assuming, of course, Todd Bowles is a defensive coordinator.
Titans at 31. Chris, I want to go to you on this and begin with you because you have somebody not in Ryan's first round, Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa.
Yeah, Trevor Penning is going to be another one to keep an eye on, especially after the Senior Bowl. 6'7", already 325 pounds, so he really looks like that classic right tackle. After losing Jack Conklin in free agency a couple years ago, a team in the Titans that certainly wants to run the football and be super physical, that's what you get with Trevor Penning, that he is a downhill type player. But with the length at being 6'7" and pretty good athleticism, I think he's going to be picked higher than his teammate Spencer Brown, who went in the 3rd round to the Bills in last year's draft.
All right, we end on agreement. 32. Oh, sorry, Ryan. I cut you off. This is going to happen a lot. We know this is going to happen.
I don't take it personally, Amanda. I get it. I have him going offensive lineman as well, Darian Kennard, out of Kentucky, who is an absolute mauler of a human being. He can play outside where he played at Kentucky this year. You can kick him inside. And to Chris's point, the idea is to beef up that offensive line for the Titans. They struggled at times this year. Ryan Tannehill can certainly attest to as much. I do love Raymond and Penning, 2 guys that Chris had in his mock draft, 2 smaller school guys who will have a chance to make a name for themselves. But if you want something in terms of knowing what you're getting, we saw Kennard play against SEC guys each and every week and did it at a high level. And I think that's something that perhaps the Titans could be looking for.
Mock draft season, I'm going to make myself kind of like a swear jar every time I interrupt one of you and jump ahead. All right, let's go to the end. Let's go to the Packers at 32. You guys do end on agreement here. Chris, Logan Hall out of Houston.
Yeah, Logan Hall is that versatile chess piece that the Packers really like. They have Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith. They play on the edge. They kick inside. They're bigger. They're longer. That's what you get with Logan Hall. And his teammate Peyton Turner snuck into the 1st round last year to the Saints. No one really expected that. I think we could see something pretty similar this year. 6 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. 6'6", might tip the scales close to 280 pounds. And for a team that likes to be as multiple up front as the Packers do, this would make a lot of sense for Green Bay.
Amanda, swear jar, take the proceeds and buy Brinson a shirt. I love Logan Hall. He is unblockable, and he is one of my favorite players. I think he is a first-round talent. We'll see how it unfolds. If he doesn't go first round, he'll be early second without doubt.
It would just be like a sweater vest. It wouldn't even be like anything. Ryan, I think this is like your 20th mock draft or something. So congratulations. Chris, this is our first segment together. It's nice to see you. You can check out both of their mock drafts on CBSSports.com. And, of course, you can hear more from Ryan Wilson and all of the friends on the Pick 6 podcast. We'll see if Will Brinson does indeed decide to just rip off his shirt at one point, run out of the camera frame. That's why you want to download and follow. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.